Hey, what's happening out there, everybody? My name is Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes. In today's tutorial, I want to talk about the Gatsby image. You can find that at gatsbyjs.org/packages/Gatsby image. At first glance, and I kind of love the ironic piece of it all, it says speedy optimized images without the work. And if you look at it, you're like, well, that's a lot of work. That's, wow. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, let's take a step back. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to go through how to write your first GraphQL to pull an image using the Gatsby image, and also show you why and how it is so freaking powerful that I use Gatsby image in everything I do now. This has been a complete game changer on the web. And with that, let's get started. All right, welcome back. So for this project, I am using the Gatsby Starter default library. The reason why I'm already using this one is it already has Gatsby Image. He actually pulls little spaceman. I've dubbed him Jeff, is his kind of his pseudo name. There could be a real name for that. If any of the Gatsby people are watching, I'd love to hear if there's a name for this guy. So I've called him Jeff. That's kind of his name for right now. But what I like about this, it already brings in the appropriate plugins, including Gatsby Image and Gatsby Plugin Chart. Two pieces we're going to use to actually transform this image to make it actually show up using Gatsby Image. Now I have it right back here as my index.js file. So the first thing I want to do is I need to bring in my own picture because the spaceman's cool, but I want my own image to be showing up. So I have my picture right here. In the library, you have this little guy. I call him Jeff. And they have the Gatsby icon already as well. So I brought in a very, very large picture from the Cook Islands, South Pacific, where I like to vacation when I am recording this during a pandemic when we used to be able to vacation. So cook-islands.jpg is the file I'm working on. Now I also brought in a very, very large file size to illustrate something. So if I bring this picture in, so if I do a traditional model, I'm just saying import, and we'll call it Cook Islands from images. And I believe it's just, I always double check because I'm making sure nothing was spelled incorrectly. Nope, nothing is. So if I bring in a picture just by the normal default image, and I'm also going to get rid of Jeff for right now, he's going to go away, which then means that's going to go away. So if I bring in a traditional IMG circ and say, hey, we're going to bring in Cook Islands, and always property give it an alt. So I'll say a beach in the Cook Islands, and we'll close it up. So if I just do a traditional method of lowercase img and I save this, let's go and test this. I have iterm. Oh, I did just install a update to Gatsby. So I'm going to run this by saying Gatsby develop. I'll move this out a little ways here. And what it's going to do is it's going to hopefully run Gatsby develop. I am running in the index.js. There are kind of three files of the 404 page, but really I'm running the index.js of the Gatsby starter. And hopefully, there we go. So I should have localhost already running. There we go. And there it is. So it's not bad, but it's also a very, very big file. If I go inspect this file, you're going to see image circ and of course static Cook Islands. And this file is of course very, very big. Intrinsic at 5,043, 3495 pixels. That's big. And if I try to run this online, this is going to bog down my site. So what I want to do is I want to use the Gatsby image, which is uppercase. If I find it right here. Where'd it go? Maybe. If I can find some actual code. Here it is. It's actually uppercase IMG. So let's actually run a GraphQL, which we're going to take a look at. And I will bring the GraphQL. So if you're new to GraphQL, it can at first be really daunting because all it is gives you a directory of information. You're like, well, where do I have to go to find this? So what I want to do is in GraphQL, I want to, hello Sublime, where'd you come from? What I want to do, I think I hit the wrong, I hit Command Tab and it showed up and there it went. Anyways, back to GraphQL. So what I want to do is, I want to get this back to where it looks like this. Because what I want to do is I want to go find, that's what I was looking for, the Command Tab on the other screen for the Finder, was I want to go look for the file Cook Islands. Because I'm going to query this information. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for a file. So I first want to look for, well, a file. And in there gives you a lot of options. And I want a file to equal a certain file name. But I'm looking for the file name to equal the Cook Islands. But I'm looking really for a relative path of a file name. So I'm looking for is the word relative path. So down here is where it says relative path. And in here it says EQ or equals. In this equals, I'm going to type Cook Islands.jpg and let's run that. And my thing about GraphQL is, does it give me an error message or does it actually find an ID? And the ID is associated with that file name. So if I type islands, it's going to say file null as it doesn't find it. Now, how the heck did it find that file name? That's due to, if we go full circle, let's go back to a little farther out. What I'm looking for is the Gatsby config. So in the Gatsby config, we have the Gatsby source file system. And Gatsby, this is also why I ran the Gatsby starter default, is it said, you know what, use the images folder as the Gatsby source file system. So it knows to look for the files in the file system. I literally am just saying it file enough times to probably drive you crazy. So anyways, it found the images folder because we've said the folder is in path, directory name, source, or I like to say circ, images. So it's looking for all the images in the images folder. And what specifically are we looking for? We're looking for the Cook Islands. And it knows it found it. That's awesome, but how do we leverage or use that file? Well, this is where when we installed, we're looking for the child image sharp. So down here, looking for down below called child image sharp. And if I click on that, I can take out the ID. ID comes by default, and we'll take it out for right now. So in child image sharp, you get two options. There is a resize, resolution, sizes. That's a different piece of it all. But for starting, we're looking for either fixed or fluid. And as you might imagine, the fixed is, well, it doesn't move. But on the web, I think of pictures like Jello. I want them to move. So I want to focus on fluid. So I'm going to say fluid right here because that's your options in child image sharp, fixed, and fluid. Now in fluid, you get a whole bunch of options to play with. And we can go into all these we want, but the main important one is the max width. Because I think about in my design, how big do I want this picture to be? Now I'm going to remove some of the settings within Gatsby as the default design. So I'm going to say 2000. Max width 2000. So in here, you then can say, well, I want a max width. And if I say play, it'll drop in all of these different options. Original name, image presentation width, height. That's great. It's also going to, it's going to throw all these different formats. So what basically Gatsby did is it resized your picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways in a way. So what it did was it said, okay, presentation width is 2000, presentation height is 133, but it also made everything be a WebP format. It made an SVG file. It just went to town. Now, we don't use Gatsby Image in this way because those are good, but we just don't use it that way. And there's a reason for that. if we head back into Chrome, which I'm already in Chrome, I'm hitting Command Tab and I'm like, oh, I'm already in Chrome. There we go. So what I'm looking for in this area is I'm looking for, after I say fixed or fluid, I'm looking for something with 3 dots and Gatsby something. In this case, it's Gatsby Image Sharp Fixed. If I scroll down, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the Gatsby Transformer Sharp, because that's going to transform my image. Now, if you know what it says here, note, due to a limitation of GraphQL, you cannot currently use these fragments in graphical. And as you can see, we are in graphical. So this will not pull properly inside of GraphQL. The trick is, though, is that what I do is that, just to make sure it's working, I run this query with all of these in here just to go, okay, it's finding it. There's no error messages. And this tells me that there's no error messages, I'm in good shape. That to me is a checkbox to say, that's awesome. So what we have to do is we have to then use one of these options. And I primarily use the Gatsby Image Sharp Fluid. If you are running Contentful, if you are running Datto CMS or Sanity, there are other options as well. But I'm focused on the top one, which is Gatsby Transformer Sharp. And I'm going to pull the fluid. And what I have to do is, if this were to work, and this is not going to work properly in GraphQL, but I have to say ... and Gatsby Image Sharp Fluid. Now it says unknown fragment, so it's not going to work appropriately. In fact, it's going to go GraphQL error. Again, it even tells you within, where are we here, that if we read this one more time, due to a limitation of GraphQL, you cannot currently use the fragments in graphical. So it's telling us we can't use it, but this is written properly. So let's write this inside of our index. So if we go out of Gatsby config and back into our index, I'm going to go to the bottom and I want to say export construct a query equal to a GraphQL with our backticks, 2, because 2 is better than 1. Now in the modern day version 2, almost version 3, if we save this, let's see if it's going to yell at me or if it's going to work. Yeah, nothing's actually being queried, so it's not going to work in that direction. But what I have to do is I have to declare the GraphQL element. It doesn't just work by default. So up at the very top, I also want to write import and say curly brackets GraphQL from Gatsby. So just once again, and then if you have a link as well, I have it 2 ways. But if you already have links on your page, you can double up the GraphQL by saying link, comma, GraphQL. And that will also work because Gatsby is the same as Gatsby. So it's up to you if you want to write it that way or keep them separate. I'll double them up because, well, why not? So I have this export construct query. Now, once again, it doesn't have any requests, so it's going to yell at me. I had a feeling, but I jumped the gun too fast. So in here, what I want to do is I then want to write a query. So our query is our query. That's literally what it is. We just take off the word my query to do a query. And that's again saying query 3 times fast. Let me move it this way so we can see it in this way. And you can copy it. I'm just going to try to type it and see if I mess up or not. But what you can also do is you can say, you know what? I'm going to grab 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I can copy this. So what I want to do is I can also say query in here, curly brackets, paste in. So much for typing it. And just like that, no error messages. That's pretty awesome. So we have to do a little bit of a change because it did query the file, but now that we're inside of index, I have to give it a file name. Just like I said, import Cook Islands up here, I have to import a name down here. So I'm going to say Cook Islands I will say Gatsby Image. There we go. So what it's going to do is, this is the name of the variable that I'm going to use, Cook Islands Gatsby Image. And along the way, I will save it to make sure nothing hiccups. So far, so good. It built the piece, the file, relative path, equal Cook Islands. So far, so good. Now, at this point in time, we now have to bring in the Gatsby image to actually utilize it. So let's go up to the top and add a Gatsby image. Now keep in mind that the word image was just a name that Gatsby Starter Default came up with. So we're not going to use that. Let's just get rid of it to not get it any more confusing. I'm also not going to use this one at the top, and I won't use the one I put in as well. So my thing is, let's do a little housekeeping before we bring something else in. It's always good to clean the kitchen before you start cooking. So there we go. Let's say import img from Gatsby image. And it turns dark, and if I save it, it's like, hey man, you didn't use it. You defined it, but you never used it. So you're like, well, but I'm gonna use it. So what I have to do is, with the Gatsby image, I have to pull the data from down here. So we have to declare a variable and say curly bracket, not normal brackets. Let's bring the curly brackets in. Let's say data, because data is going to pull the data from down here, the power of Gatsby. So now what I want to do is, I'm going to say capital IMG, because we're going to mimic the capital IMG up here. In image, the question is it fixed or is it fluid? So, well, if we follow this, it's going to be fluid eventually. So let's say fluid. And fluid is going to follow with an equal sign and a curly bracket. We're going to say data. That's going to pull the data down below and say data, if I can type. And now what we're going to do is we're going to follow this rabbit hole down as far as we can. So I'm going to follow Cook Islands Gatsby image. And if you want to get it perfect, I can always copy and paste it. So data.cookislands Gatsby image. And then below that is child image sharp. So let's say child image sharp. Well, we got to keep moving. So below that is fluid. So let's say fluid. And now we have the image sitting within the word fluid equals this area. And it's always good to have the alt information. I'm just going to make it a little more readability. So I'm going to drop down these areas. Return keys don't matter, so you don't have to worry about that piece. Let's move it. There we go. And alt, this is a beach in the Cook Islands. And we're going to close our image like that. And now when I save it, it should rebuild. There should be no error messages. If there is, and I didn't type something properly. So far, so good. So let's go take a look and see what happens. If we do that, we run this, check it out. Picture looks good. Now we saw before was that it set image circ. But note inside of Chrome what it now says. It uses the source circ set. And the circ set is one of the coolest pieces to use on the internet. It was for the longest time the most freaking annoying thing to do, because you'd have to build a whole bunch of versions of files for the circ set to work. The circ set essentially said, and I call it circ set, it's source set, was that it would pull multiple variations of pictures in, so it would load at a different speed or rate depending upon on a mobile versus desktop. It was game changing, but if you think about in the past, you'd have to build 5, 6, 7 pictures all manually. And so if you had 10 pictures, you wanted to build 5 different ways. That's 50 pictures. If you had to change a picture, that's changing a picture 5 times. We didn't even have to change the picture. In fact, the picture right here is kind of hanging out. Depends on if it's 3,000, 2,000, all different sizes. 500 width, 2,000 width, 4,000 width, 100 vertical width, they've got all the sizes mapped out, and yet still all I have, if I go into images, is just one picture and 13.8 megs. Yet it made the circ set. I wish I could have a compare and contrast. I guess I could. I just didn't. I took out the image and now in hindsight. But anyways, it used the picture tag to wrap then around the circ set right here. And this is the so powerful way of the Gatsby image. And this is true to form. So what it also has, or what it does say, and it does take a little bit of getting to know, but speedy optimize images without the work. Now that I have one query built, I could in theory do two queries. So if I were to bring another picture in, I'm looking at a different screen, and let's go and bring in a palm tree because we all love palm trees. So here's a palm tree, random picture from the island as well. It wasn't the best area of the lagoon, but it's just a palm tree. There it is. So let's say palm tree. Now it's going to say, hey, it added a file. We're all good. What if I just double this and say palm tree? And the palm tree is going to match the word palm tree. So I'll double check. If everything works below, all I have to do is I have to change what it equals to, and palm tree is going to show up. So if I double this and I say, you know what, now I want two images. Now I want the palm tree, not the Gatsby, or not the Cook Islands Gatsby image. So I'm going to say palm tree. All I had to do was change it, and I'm not stopping this recording. If I had a timer, it would work. It's going to rebuild the queries. It does take a few minutes longer to do. That's okay. I want this time to be taken up, not the user's time. So if I go back to this, oh, what'd I do? Nope, nothing. It just didn't reload quick enough. Check it out. Now I have this picture up top and this picture down below. I literally just dropped a picture in, copied and pasted. So now I have two queries going on. And what I usually should do in proper design is, because an image tag is an inline element, I almost always wrap my images around p tags. The reason for that is, notice how there's no space between the pictures. That's not something I want to do within a p tag or within an image tag, and especially not a picture tag. I want the p tag to dictate the spacing because, boop, there it is. Because now all the paragraphs are spaced appropriately. So in true design fashion, and for all the design sticklers out there who are watching, please indent and tab in your code. It's easier to find, and yes, what I should do is that and that, because that is a proper notation of how it's working. So now I have the image tag fluid, data, Cook Islands, image, child image sharpen fluid, and add the alt. And just like that, I added two pictures using Gatsby Image. This will make your pictures sing the whatever. I'm lost on the alliteration of this. This will make Google happy, because Google right now is also running about page speed. And the faster your pictures can load, the better it is. And of course, it's fluid. So if I go to a different size screen, the picture, of course, will go bigger and smaller. And that's how you can leverage the Gatsby image running a basic GraphQL. And once again, you can't run these 3-dot piece. So if I have to go back and test it, and actually you have to bring in some sort of different element, I'm not going to worry about it now, but this is where you would see GraphQL errors if you had them in there, and that's where those 3 dots do not work properly. And by taking that same piece, instead of saying my query, I'm just going to say query, and applying that to your file, now you have the power of the querying inside of Gatsby with the Gatsby image. So I'm curious, did this help you with your Gatsby design? Have you started using Gatsby image now? If so, I'd love a comment. I am a designer by trade. I'm also a front-end web developer, but to me, it took a little bit of time to get used to the GraphQL. I get it. It's not pretty, it's sexy, it's pretty boring in black and white. But my goal on this channel is, as a designer who codes, my goal is how can we make the designs on the web even better by learning how to program. So if you're one of those people, I'd love for you to give me a comment if this did help you in your design tactics. If you are watching this for the first time, once again, thank you much for watching this entirety through. And if you've loved this video, I'm trying to put them out every single week. Smash that subscribe button. I love to build this channel up to where it really serves a greater audience. Once again, my name is Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes, and I hope you enjoyed this video so much.